So today we're talking about cervical spine and the thoracic spine and how the two interrelate. First thing we're going to discuss is active range of motion. So again, active range of motion is you moving the body part yourself. So if we look at the spine, so it's made up of cervical, thoracic, and lumbar spine. All three have different functions. So the cervical spine is a lot more mobile, but it's less stable. The thoracic spine, its primary job is for protection because we have the vital organs within the thoracic cavity. So we want structure, we want protection, so it doesn't move a lot. And then lastly, the lumbar spine. We've talked before about how you've got the big vertebrae down in the bottom, the small vertebrae on top, kind of like a pyramid, a cheerleading pyramid stacking up, and that's where the lumbar, the big, thick, supportive structures are, and how each one of these structures we're going to see plays a different role in range of motion. So first off, if we look at cervical active range of motion, let's do rotation first. So Jake's going to look right and then left. And so you can see you get a lot of mobility out of the cervical spine with rotation. Now put your hands on your rib cage, and now what you're going to do is keep your head and your shoulders together and rotate one direction then the other. And you can see throughout his thoracic spine, he does not get much rotation. Now move your hands down to your hips, and you're going to do the same thing. Rotate right and left. So you can see how we don't have nearly as much range of motion in the lumbar spine, but we definitely have more than we did in the thoracic spine. And now Jake's just going to combine all of those, and he's just going to rotate. So rotating through the hips, you can see that we can turn around and look almost directly behind us. So this is something that you can do at home there. Just do those three motions, see how well you can look. Just turn and look and pick a spot and see if you can find it with each one of the different segments of the spine. And now we also do the same thing with flexion and extension. So Jake's going to tuck his chin down, look to the ceiling. So especially looking up, he's got quite a bit of range of motion. And then put your hands on your rib cage, keep your head with your shoulders, see how far down you can go, and then back. Okay. Now put your hands on your hips. How far forward can you go? How far back? And then just put it all together. So with adding the hips in, we can now touch the floor. So that adds to our function being able to reach. So that's our range of motion. So now let's move over to the last two pages, and these are going to be the special tests. We're going to do the Sperling's test. We're going to do vertical compression, decompression, or distraction, and then we're going to end with the vertebral artery test. So these are the three tests that you're going, or four tests that you're going to want to be able to do for the lab final. So first off, let's just look at the anatomy a little bit. So you see as your vertebrae stack, as you extend, you close down these spaces here. As you flex forward, you see the spaces open between the vertebrae. So what we're going to do with the vertical compression is we're just going to compress that. And if you have a nerve root that's irritated, that's getting pinched between the vertebrae below and the vertebrae above, then you're going to reproduce pain. With the distraction, you see that it separates and it pulls off of that nerve. So if that provides pain relief, that's a good sign. The Sperlings, we're going to not only rotate, or we're not only going to extend, but now we're going to rotate, and you'll see how that will close down on a nerve as you rotate, and you're going to be closing down on the same side that you rotate to. And then lastly, the vertebral artery test. You see the red line is the vertebral artery. It passes through a little hole in your cervical vertebrae, and so what we will do on that is we're going to see if we close off the vertebral artery, and that'll have some distinctive symptoms or signs that will show up if that is a positive test. So those are our four tests, and now I'll show you how to do those tests on our model. So let's do Sperling's first. So you have your subject sit up nice and tall. You have them look all the way up to the ceiling, and then he will rotate and look towards me. And so just envision those vertebrae, like I was showing you on the model, are closing down on that nerve. And then a lot of times that's going to give you a positive sign right there. He says, wow, oh, that hurts, especially pain being reproduced out into the shoulder. If it doesn't, then I'm just going to put some pressure straight down. And if, again, that reduces his pain, especially out to his shoulder, that's a positive test. And we know that the nerve is being compressed. And then, like everything, we always do both sides. So we do here and see if we get the same symptom there. Usually a nerve root's going to be compressed on one side or the other. So that's going to be positive on one side, negative on the other. So now the vertical compression, again, you want them sitting up nice and tall. You don't want them slouching. And all I want to do is just put pressure. Usually it depends on how tall they are or how long their neck is. I'll just sometimes rest my elbows on their shoulders. Jake's got a little longer neck, or my arms are shorter than they used to be. And I'm just going to push straight down into his head. Again, I'm envisioning that spinal model with that nerve coming in between. And if I'm pushing down and compressing on that and reproducing Jake's symptoms out to his shoulder, down his arm, I've got a positive sign. And then the other thing that I want to do, I'm just going to get behind his ears at his mastoid process, and I'm just going to lift up. So as I lift up, it reduces his pain or eliminates his pain out into his shoulder or in his neck. Again, that's a good sign. That's a positive sign that he's had some vertebral or some nerve root compression at his vertebrae in his cervical spine. So then lastly, come around and lay on your back, and we'll do the vertebral artery test. So you get them right onto the edge of the table so that they can drop their head straight back a little bit. There you go. So you want to support their head. You don't want to just leave them dangling. Okay, so what I want to do from here, I'm just holding a conversation with them, making sure that everything's okay. And then as long as we're okay here, I'm going to rotate his head one direction, and then I'm going to have Jake start counting backwards from 20.
20, 19, 18, 17, 16.
3, 2, 1. And so what I'm doing as he's counting, I'm watching his eyes. Two things will happen that I'm looking for. His eyes will start twitching, or his speech will become slurred. So if I'm only looking for the eyes and don't have him talk, then I'm not going to pick up if that's a positive sign. And then I go the same thing the other way. I'm having him count backwards from 20. I'm watching his eyes. Go ahead and sit on it. If there's anything, if he starts slurring his speech or gets confused, anything like that, I take that as a positive test. And then if I see his eyes starting to twitch, you want to make sure he doesn't have something going on with his eyes to begin with. But if he gets either of those or any combination of those, getting them to see their doctor pretty quick. So that's our 4 tests today. So we had the Spurlings, we had the compression, the distraction, and then the vertebral artery. Have a great day. Bye.